Hello everyone. Today we're going to be covering a topic that a lot of people may run across, using Credential Manager with Windows PowerShell. Where do we begin with this? Well, one of the things that I've always struggled with is never wanting to put passwords in actual code. So how do we work with this? Well, there are a few ways of working with this. First off, you can save creds as a text file in a secure fashion. The only issue is you have to deal with text files. Whether you delete them, where you stored them, how to work with them, when you need to update them, where are those said files. So they're kind of a pain. So a few years ago, I came across a PowerShell module called Credential Manager. As you can see here on the screen, it's created by Dave Garnar. The link will be in the description as along with the blog post for this. So let's jump into this a little bit. All right, let's jump into PowerShell. I already have this open, so let's install this module. Let's do install-module-name-credential manager. We're going to hit enter. We're going to be prompted here in a second. A for all. All right, now that it is installed, let's do an import. Import-module-name-credential manager. All right. Let's find out the commands we can run with this. Let's do a get-command. All right, so we can run 4 different commands. We can do get stored credential, get strong password, get stored credential, and remove stored credential. Get stored credential is pulling a stored credential that you've created and stored in Credential Manager. This can be either the PowerShell or directly saved to Credential Manager. Get strong password is what it sounds like. It generates a strong password for you based off some variables that you've created. New stored credential is creating a new stored credential in Credential Manager, and then remove is removing. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to actually jump into new stored credential. So let's do a get help new stored credential, and this will post our variations of our commands. We can do new stored credentials. You can add a comment. By default, it does add a comment, and we'll kind of go over that as we go through. But if you want to add something specifically, you can. Password and username, I prefer not to use, but you can use them if you need to. We'll kind of go over my methodology for it. I do like to use the get credentials to pull in that information. And then target is what we're going to save the credential as. In Credential Manager, it's listed as internet or network address. But for us, it's going to be a credential name. Type. There are a few different types that you can use. These are all based off of Credential Manager. First one is generic, domain password, domain certificate, domain visible password, generic certificate, domain extended, maximum EX. And these are how they're listed in Credential Manager. Persistent, there are 3 options here. It's either session, local machine, or enterprise. A lot of times this feature is overlooked. By default, when you do a new stored credentials, it creates it as a session persistent type, which means when you log off or reboot, those stored credentials are gone. If you want something to persist longer than that, you need to do local_machine. The next one is enterprise. Enterprise I typically don't use for the fact that I don't want other users on my machine to be able to access the stored credentials. But if you are using service accounts, for service accounts, I do tend to like to run the new stored credential as that service account, so that way that service account has access to the stored credentials. So let's go create some credentials. So for our test run, we're going to do new stored credential credentials, $, parentheses, get credential, parentheses, target, test creds dash type generic dash persistent local machine, as we want to pass through the next machine. You do not need to set generic, but it does help in finding out and knowing where it is. So let's hit enter, and then we're going to prompt for a username, testing, and then created our credential. As you can see, it did post the type of generic, target name of testing creds. It did post a comment, the right time, the password size. As you can see, the password in clear text. Persistence, we are doing local machine, and then username of testing. We can run a command of get stored credentials, and this will show it as you normally would for a stored credential file if you're going to import it. If you want to actually see what we see up here, all right, if you want to see what we got when we created the credentials, you can do a get-stored credentials-target, and then your credentials name, and then do as credential object, and it will spit out everything that you saw before. If you want to store the credentials as a variable, you can use a variable beforehand. For us, we're going to use test creds, and then get stored credential-target, and then our credentials. So hit enter, and then if you do test creds and hit enter, you'll see your username and password as a secure string. This will enable you to use this in a script or various other things as you see fit. For us, let's go ahead and remove this credential. So we're going to do remove-stored credential-target, and then our credential, and then type generic because we created as generic. Sometimes if you do have multiple credentials with the same name, it will delete the generic one first, and if you have it stored as a domain password, it won't get deleted until you define the type. So let's hit enter, and we have removed our credentials. It should be no longer storing a credential manager. As you can see, it's no longer there. Let's do the get strong password, and a couple of the options are length, and for us we're going to do 20, and then number of special characters. We could define this as 15, and it'll spit out a password for us to use. We could have used this for our test creds. We chose not to, but this is an option. All right, if you want to do something a little more complex and do a new stored credentials and use the username, this one we're going to use testing 2. And then we're going to also use the password command. In the password command, we are going to use the $ parentheses, and then we're going to do get strong password length of 20. We're going to do a number of special characters 4, and then in our parentheses, we're going to do the same target as testing creds, and then generic and persistent. So let's hit enter. And as you see, it created a password for us. We didn't know what it was. We didn't put it in. And if we open up, back up Credential Manager, hit refresh, there are our testing creds for today. All right, I hope this helps everybody in using Credential Manager with PowerShell. Again, the link for the PS gallery for this and also my blog post on this will be in the description. If you find this content useful, hit the like and subscribe button and the bell thingy if you want to get notified when new videos are dropped.